Hey, let's talk about hormones. Uh, Again, this is a pretty long chapter, so I'm just gonna try to highlight some stuff instead of go everything. Um, okay. The functions of the different hormones, you can look those up. They're also in the anatomy thing, and they should have been discussing anatomy as well. So if they haven't, let me know. I'll do something else. But I'm just gonna focus on the major mechanism of action and stuff like that. Okay. So here's the endocrine glands and what they do. Okay. So first thing I'll go over is the chemical classification of hormones, because it really does matter how they're classified and how they work. Okay. First group are amines that are derived from amino acids tyrosine and tryptophan. Okay. The examples, things from adrenal medulla, so epinephrine, norepinephrine, thyroid hormone, and the pineal glands. Polypeptides and proteins, antidiuretic hormone, insulin, oxytocin, growth hormone. These are all polypeptides. Okay, and then usually glycoproteins are lumped together with polypeptides and proteins, but FSH and LH are glycoproteins. Okay, and the last group are steroids that are derived from cholesterol. So testosterone, estrogen, estradiol is the most common form of estrogen, progesterone, cortisol. Okay, this is fundamentally very different, and we'll go over why. Okay. 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 So the biosynthetic pathway for steroids. Basically, you make everything from cholesterol. Okay. Okay. Uh, okay. You can classify hormones based on action. So they're either soluble in water or non-soluble in water. And if they're non-soluble in water, that means they're soluble in fat. Okay. So you have polar hormones that are water soluble, and you have insoluble in water, and they're soluble in fat. That is the lipophilic hormones. Okay. Um, okay. If they're polar, they're water soluble. If they're non-polar, they're fat soluble. And this is important because of how they work, basically. Okay. Remember, your cell is a phospholipid bilayer, so things that are water soluble generally can't cross the bilayer. Things that are fat soluble can. Okay. Pre-hormones and pro-hormones. Usually, pre-hormones are called pre-pro-hormones. Okay. Pre-hormones are inactive pro-hormones that must be modified within the target cell. And then pro-hormones are inactive hormones that actually have to be cut at some point to become active. So the pro-hormone is like a longer thing, except you need to cut out the middle of it for it to become active. Okay, a great example of that is insulin. Insulin is secreted or made as a pro-hormone, and then you cut out the part of it and it becomes activated and becomes active insulin. Okay. All right. Okay. Common aspects of neural and endocrine regulation. Um, Hormones and neurotransmitters interact with both of specific receptors. Actually, there are some hormones that also function as neurotransmitters and stuff like that. Okay. Okay, so binding to the receptor causes a change within the cell. There are mechanisms to turn off cellular activity. The signal is either removed or inactivated, and we'll get more into that in a little bit, okay, or tamping down, okay. All right, hormones may be antagonistic, synergistic, or permissive, okay. So let's talk about what those three are, okay. Synergistic effects are like 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. Okay? So two or more hormones produce a particular effect. And they're usually not just additive, but they're synergistic. Okay? Okay. So here are some effects. Okay. Okay, permissive effects. Permissive effects allow for a second hormone to work. Okay, like exposure to estrogen makes the uterus more responsive to progesterone. Okay, antagonistic effects are when two hormones counter affect each other, or 2 plus 2 is 0, or 2 plus 2 is 1. Okay, for example, insulin and glucagon have opposite effects on basically everything. Okay. All right, hormone half-life. Okay, anytime you release a hormone, you don't want it there forever because that wouldn't work, right? So you want hormones to be in the solution, and then you want the hormones to eventually tamp down and disappear. And if you need more, you just make more. Okay, but you need a signal to go away very quickly, usually. So you have a half-life. The half-life is the time required to lower the concentration in half. Okay, not disappear, but in half. Okay? All right. All right, so hormone concentration. Tissues only respond when the hormone concentration is at a certain level or above. Okay? At higher pharmacological concentrations, the effect might be different from normal. The higher concentrations might result in binding of receptors or related hormones. Like, for example, IGF-1 at 10 times the concentration binds IGF-2 and stuff like that. So there's the higher concentrations, they start binding to things that they maybe shouldn't. Okay. And that's why, like, you can't just randomly inject someone with some hormone that you know the mechanism of action for, because you don't know the side effects. It could bind to another similar receptor that has other actions. Okay. Okay. So priming effects so priming effects upregulation. Some target cells respond to a particular hormone by increasing the number of receptors they have for that hormone. This makes it more and more sensitive to that hormone. The other thing is desensitization and downregulation. So this is the more common thing. The release of a hormone causes a reaction that downregulates the receptors for that hormone. So next time you need more hormone to get the same effect. Okay, and then more hormone to get the same effect. Okay, occurs, for example, in adipose cells. In response to high concentrations of insulin, you stop responding to the insulin, and that is diabetes. Okay? All right. Hormone action. So hormones bind to receptors either on the target cell surface or inside the target cell. The binding is highly specific. Okay. 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 So hormones bind to receptors with a high affinity. So once they bind, they stay attached. So hormones bind to receptors with low capacity, which saturates the receptors with hormone molecules. So so hormones bind very tightly, and they stay very long and very well. Okay. Okay. Lipophilic love fat, so we can go through the phospholipid bilayer. So the hormones that are lipophilic, the receptors are not on the surface of the cell. They're either inside the cytoplasm or on the surface of the nucleus. Okay, the ones that are hydrophilic are going to be on the surface of the plasma membrane. Okay. All right. So, okay. Yeah, let me show you the picture of how it works. Okay. Okay. The major mechanism of action for steroid hormones is that they modify the transcription profile of the cell. Okay. So what happens is they cross into the cell membrane. Okay, they lipophilic, and first of all, so they cross. They bind to the receptor either on the membrane, the nuclear membrane, or in this case right here on the cytoplasm. Okay, and what actually happens is that they dimerize. Okay, so these are the receptor protein molecules. If they're by themselves, they don't attach to the hormone response element. But once they attach to the steroid forces these receptors to dimerize. They attach to each other. So when they dimerize, now they fit into this hormone response element. Binding the DNA will change the transcriptional profile of the DNA in some manner. It either increases transcription of some gene or it decreases transcription of some gene. Okay, that part is less relevant to the hormone. The fact that your gene expression profile changes is what steroid hormones do. And therefore, that takes time. Okay. Okay. So that's why it requires 30 minutes to work and stuff like that. Your gene expression profile has to change. Okay. Okay. Co-activators and co-repressors. Okay. So other molecules are needed in addition to the steroid hormone, so they can modify. Different cells have different co-activators and co-repressors, so you can have different transcriptional profile changes for any type of steroid hormone. Okay. All right. Okay. Thyroid hormone action. Okay. Thyroid hormone is in two forms, T3 and T4. Okay. T3 is active inside the cell. Okay. But basically, what happens is again, T3 binds and it goes inside the nucleus and changes the transcription profile of the nucleus. Okay. All right. If you can't cross the phospholipid bilayer, you can't cross into the cell. And therefore, you need a second messenger to send the code into the cell. So you need a small intracellular messenger that is either calcium or that. So, or cyclic AMP, or some other thing I can't remember. Okay. So there are three possible second messenger systems: adenine cyclase, phospholipase C, and tyrosine kinase. So let's talk about what each of these look like. Okay. So here you bind, and all of these work really similarly. Okay. So you can't get into the cell, so you bind to the surface of the cell. That triggers a G protein, okay, to become activated. That G protein activates something called adenylate cyclase, okay, that makes a cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP is your second messenger and turns a whole bunch of other stuff on. Okay. 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 Phospholipase C. So here's phospholipase C. Okay. So here's a hormone. Here's a G protein activation again. But instead of cyclic AMP, this one activates DAG. This turns on other things, usually on the surface. Okay. The IP3 is your second messenger, and it causes calcium release from the endoplasmic reticulum, and that calcium release causes other changes inside the cell. Okay. For example, the calcium release causes binding of calmodulin. Calmodulin causes this change. Okay. Okay. The last one is the tyrosine kinase system. The tyrosine kinase. Okay. Here's the tyrosine kinase system. Okay. You have insulin, you have the tyrosine kinases, and then you can attach the insulin to the tyrosine kinases. Usually they don't look like this. Usually they're kind of apart from one another. The insulin brings the two halves closer together, and when the two halves get close enough, they dimerize and they self-phosphorylate each other. And when they self-phosphorylate each other, that activates the tyrosine kinase. Okay, and then you have the downstream effects. Okay. Okay. The pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is attached to the hypothalamus by the infundibulum. Okay. The pituitary gland, when I explain it in anatomy, I explain it as two separate things, and they really are two separate things. The anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. Okay. The anterior lobe is glandular epithelium, so it comes from the roof of the mouth up. The posterior pituitary is nervous tissue and comes from brain down. Okay? So, okay. The pituitary hormones, the tropic hormones stimulate hormone secretion in other glands. Growth hormone, okay? So, the other name for growth hormone, somatotropic hormone. Okay, soma, body, tropic, hormone that controls other hormones. Okay, thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates thyroid hormone. Adrenocortical tropic hormone stimulates the hormones in the adrenal cortex. Okay, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, stimulates hormones in the follicle. Okay, and then luteinizing hormone and prolactin. Okay. All right. These things stimulate other hormones to grow. Okay. Okay. Like for example, LH in females, it causes the luteum, corpus luteum to secrete progesterone and stuff like that. Okay. Okay. The posterior pituitary. The posterior pituitary is directly connected to the hypothalamus through a tract. Okay, and it secretes two hormones. Okay, one is ADH, which promotes retention of the water in the kidneys, also known as vasopressin. Uh, Vasovasculature, pressin, pressure, increased pressure. Okay, or the second one is oxytocin. Oxytocin stimulates contractions in childbirth and milk letdown and lactation. There's another effect to oxytocin. It causes bonding. It is known as the love hormone. It causes usually the mother and child to, or the mother to attach to the child. Okay. 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 So oxytocin is stimulated by suckling. So obviously, so when a baby suckles, you want it causes the milk to come out. Technically, you also want the attachment, the bonding between mother and child at that time. Okay. So the mother will keep feeding it. Okay. Okay. So this is why I said the posterior pituitary and the anterior pituitary are two different things. The posterior pituitary is directly connected. The hormones are actually made in the pituitary, and they're actually are in the hypothalamus, and they're released into the pituitary through a tract. A tract is a bunch of axons in the CNS. The anterior pituitary is a blood link. It is a portal system. Okay? The stuff is made there's hormones that are made in the hypothalamus that are either stimulating hormones or inhibiting hormones, and they're released here, and they go straight here into a secondary capillary bed where they control the anterior pituitary. Okay, so while both sides are controlled by the hypothalamus, this is the posterior is a neural link, the anterior is a blood link. Okay. Okay. So here's the releasing and inhibiting hormones of the anterior pituitary. Okay. These things work on a negative feedback mechanism. Okay. Yeah. So you can look at all this. All right. High brain controls. Okay. Okay, the structure of adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are found on top of the kidney. Okay, so hold on 1 second. Okay, the adrenal glands. Okay, again, I will explain this a little differently than usual. The adrenal glands are again two different things. The middle, the adrenal medulla, is actually nervous tissue. The outer adrenal gland is the epithelial tissue. It's just like the pituitary. They're actually different glands. Okay. Okay. The adrenal medulla is neural tissue and secretes the epinephrine and norepinephrine in response to the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, the adrenal cortex is glandular epithelium and secretes steroid hormones in response to ACTH. Okay, so the way I explain this, okay, the adrenal medulla deals with short-term stress. Okay, running from a tiger. The adrenal cortex deals with long-term stress. Okay, again, long-term stress in the modern world is not what it was designed for. The long-term stress example that I like to think of, like to explain adrenal cortex function is like breaking an arm. Okay, not dealing with finals. Okay. Okay. So the functions of the adrenal cortex. Okay. So corticosteroids or corticoids. Okay. Okay. Three categories: minerals, corticoids from the zona amylosa, regulates sodium and potassium balance. Example: aldosterone. Aldosterone is the terminal hormone in this big pathway called the RAA pathway. Okay, renin, angiotensin, aldosterone pathway. Okay. Glucocorticoids from the zona folliculata actually regulate glucose metabolism, cortisol. Okay, and then adrenal androgens are weak sex hormones. Okay, like DEA, DHEA. Okay. Okay. The functions of cortisol. Okay, cortisol. Okay, stimulates protein degradation, stimulates gluconeogenesis, forming new blood, new glucose, and inhibits glucose utilization to raise blood glucose levels. Stimulates lipolysis. Okay, so if you think about what happens if you break a bone, then you need energy. And if you need energy to repair, then you have to increase the glucose levels in the bloodstream to get more sugar into the bloodstream. And because of that, you have to break down proteins and fat for energy. Okay. Exogenous glucocorticoids are used to medically suppress immune response and inhibit inflammation. Okay. And I'm sure you guys have all used cortisol at one point or another, or hydrocortisol. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. The last one, the DHEA, these are weak androgens that turn you more male. Okay. So I don't think there's anything to happen to you. You inhibit this in either males and females. In males, there's nothing to being too much. Getting too much DHEA doesn't do anything. In females, however, it does make you more male. So you have more male effects. Okay. Epinephrine and norepinephrine is activated by the sympathetic response. Okay, it has effects similar to sympathetic innervation, but lasts 10 times longer. Again, I explained this in the previous chapter. It's better that you're overexcited than underexcited, and therefore, like the lasting longer, it allows you to, go further and stuff. So, running from non-existing lying than not running from an existing line. Okay. Okay. Uh, okay. Um, There you go. So the chronic stress, blah blah deals is good for the. I mean, the whole adrenal medulla thing is good for long-term stress if you break your arm. It's not good if you're dealing with like losing a job or like those type of things. It is not a actual good thing because the cortisol contributes to depression, anxiety, memory. You cause the liver to release glucose, which elevates your blood sugar levels, which is not good. It causes you to become more resistant to insulin. It higher levels of blood pressure also causes heart problems. Uh, you know, um, causes more clots and all this other stuff that's not good. Okay, so there are side effects to applying our physiology to modern life. Okay. Okay. So here's the non-specific stress. Blah blah. Okay. Okay. Cushing syndrome results in chronic levels of high glucocorticoids. Um, okay. So it causes hemolysis and redistribution of fat that can produce a buffalo hump, like right back here. Okay. 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 So again, it can be high doses of glucocorticoids or a pituitary tumor. Okay. Okay. Addison's disease is low levels of corticosteroids. You get hypoglycemia this time. Inadequate aldosterone produces sodium and potassium imbalances. Like I said, aldosterone is the last stage in the renin-angiotensin aldosterone pathway. So low blood pressure. Okay. Okay. Oh, this. Okay. So thyroid and parathyroid. So there's the thyroid. Okay. The thyroid, the function of the thyroid is to um, control metabolism. Okay. Yeah. Action. So action of thyroid hormone protein stimulates protein synthesis, promotes maturation of the nervous system. Children increases rates of cellular respiration, elevates your basal metabolic rate. Okay. Um, okay. Okay. Calcitonin is made by the calcitonin. This is all true, but it hasn't been really shown to me a big, huge regulator of humans and stuff. Okay, diseases of the thyroid. Okay. Again, thyroid controls metabolism. So hyperthyroidism leads to overactivity, overexcitedness. Okay. Um, hypothyroidism, it leads to low metabolic rates, weight gain, and like couch potatoism, like you just can't, you don't have energy. Okay. Okay. Goiters. So goiters is a caused by low iodine levels. Uh, Iodine is found in sea water, and so anything like you get out of the sea will have sufficient levels of iodine. Um, in some parts of the country, when you're landlocked, it's hard to get iodine, which is why they eventually added iodine to salt. And so, like if you read your salt labels, they'll say it's either iodine added or iodine free. And like, the normal salt you buy is actually iodine added. That's the normal now, and that prevents goiters. So goiters you really only see in third world countries. Okay. Okay. Graves' disease. Okay. As hyperthyroidism is an autoimmune disorder where antibodies bind to the receptors for TSH. So it stimulates um, thyroid hormone production. Okay. 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 So the symptoms of hyperthyroidism, the bulging of the eyes. All right. Parathyroid hormone glands secrete parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone keeps the calcium levels in the blood. Okay. Okay. The pancreas. The pancreas is both an endocrine and exocrine gland. For this chapter, the endocrine system, we're dealing with the pancreatic islets. Okay, there are about 1,000,000 pancreatic islets. In the pancreas, they're called the islets of Langerhans. Okay, and you have two types of cells: alpha cells that secrete glucagon and beta cells that secrete insulin. Okay, and these have opposite effects to each other. Okay, insulin is the primary hormone in regulating plasma glucose concentration. So it lowers blood sugar. Glucagon is the opposite. Okay, so insulin binds to receptors on target cells. Okay, it causes you to put in more GLUT4 carrier proteins in the membrane. Glucose transport proteins bring in glucose. Okay, occurs in adipose tissue, skeletal muscle, and the liver. Okay. Okay. Indirectly stimulates the glycogen synthase in liver and skeletal muscles to promote sugar storage, and it stimulates the adipose tissue to store fat. Okay. Glucagon is the exact opposite. Its purpose is to raise blood sugars to a normal range. Okay, so to do this, it causes the liver to hydrolyze glycogen into glucose. It causes gluconeogenesis, which makes new glucose, and it causes fat burning to occur. Okay. Okay. Diabetes. There's two types of diabetes mellitus. Okay. Type 1 used to be called juvenile diabetes, and this is an autoimmune disease that where the beta cells are destroyed and you're no longer secreting insulin. Type 2 used to be called adult onset diabetes, and that's caused by insulin resistance, where your body is just no longer responding to insulin. It has downregulated its receptors, where they have decreased tissue sensitivity to insulin. Okay, gestational diabetes occurs in 4% of pregnancy due to insulin secretion that's inadequate to meet the increased demand by the fetus. Okay. Okay. The side effects of gestational diabetes is increased blood sugar levels, which means increased blood sugar to the fetus, which means larger fetus, which means the birth weight is going to be larger and it's going to be harder to come through the birth canal. Okay, my wife was freaked out about this. Like she was borderline. She wasn't even that borderline, but she was really freaked out about this. Okay. Okay, pineal gland is controlled by the hypothalamus and secretes hormone melatonin. Okay, so the secretion related to puberty, jet lag, seasonal affective disorder. So, let's just talk about jet lag. So your melatonin production is stimulated when it gets dark, okay, as part of your circadian rhythm. So if you move to a different part of the country or fly to a different part of the country or not even country, but the world, your secretion will be off until it resets by the hypothalamus. Okay. Okay. The other endocrine glands. Okay. So GI tract, gastrin, secreting CCK. These hormones control digestion, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we talk about digestion. The gonads, in males produce testosterone, females produce estrogen and progesterone. Okay, testosterone causes male effects, estrogen female effects, progesterone causes effects for gestation. Okay, it causes the uterus not to contract and therefore to help maintain the embryo if there is one. Okay, placenta produces HCG. HCG is used to regulate pregnancy. In fact, HCG is the signal that you're looking for when you pee on a stick to see if you're pregnant. Okay. Okay, we'll go through the last couple of slides very quickly. Paracrine versus autocrine regulation. Paracrine is, so para means around, okay? So the sender and the receiver are different cell types and tissues, but they're very close to one another, okay? So paracrine doesn't really use the bloodstream at all. It's just the neighboring cells. Autocrine is the same thing, it's just the neighboring cells, but it's the neighboring cells of the same cell type. Okay. Okay. So again, they affect usually transcription in the target cell. Okay. So you can read about all this here. Okay. Prostaglandins. Okay. 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 So prostaglandins, they're examples of prostaglandin action in the immune system: promote inflammation, pain, fever, etc., etc. Okay. So if you inhibit prostaglandins, okay, you inhibit inflammation, pain, and fever. Okay, that's what a lot of these anti-inflammatories that we take do. Okay, like Tylenol, aspirin, etc., etc. Okay. Okay. So NSAIDs, okay, inhibit prostaglandin synthesis. Okay, by being COX inhibitors and stuff. All right, so hopefully I'll stop sharing there. All right, see you for the next chapter.